Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum all. Welcome to National CERT CyberWatch webinar series. Today we have our 7th webinar session and we have invited Mr. Khurram Naqvi today. Khurram doesn't need any kind of an introduction. बहुत seasoned आदमी है, senior आदमी है साइबर सिक्योरिटी की फील्ड में, लेकिन मैं थोड़ा सा इंट्रोडक्शन देता हूँ और उनके टॉपिक के बारे में बताता हूँ आप सबको. Khurram Naqvi is a seasoned cybersecurity professional with over 20 years of experience in IT and cybersecurity, including more than a decade in leadership roles across telecom, shipping, and financial sectors in the UK. Currently UK में है Director Cyber Information Security Risk Management, Global Bank UK में. Khurram holds a bachelor's degree in telecommunication engineering from NUST, a master's degree in telecommunication from King's College London, and an MBA from Oxford Brookes University. He is certified in CISP, CISM, CRISC, PMP, and PMI, ACP, passionate about mentorship. He actively supports the next generation of cybersecurity professionals through coaching and career development. Today, Khurram talk about cybersecurity programs and financial services. Without wasting any time or further delay, hello Khurram, how are you?
Imran, thank you very much for the introduction. So yeah, I'm fine, thank you.
Floor is yours. आप start करें बिल्कुल. And we would have around 1 hour and 15 to 20 minutes session, webinar session. Then we will have a Q&A session after that.
जबरदस्त, ठीक है.
तो participants को मैं कहना चाहूँगा अगर कोई questions हो, कोई चीज़ हो तो आप chat box पे भी push कर सकते हैं. बाकी हम last में Q&A session लेंगे.
चलें, जबरदस्त.
Sure.
ठीक है, तो let's give it a start now. A few weeks ago, I finished preparing this presentation, slides and stories, structures, and all locked. And then just a few days before this webinar, boom, Qantas, Australia's largest airline, gets hit by a cyber attack. Up to 6 million customers' personal data exposed, names, email, loyalty data, travel records, all exposed. The systems were not taken offline though, but the trust was. And let's rewind to 2017 for a moment. It was a quiet Friday at Maersk, the global shipping and logistic giant. People were finishing up for the weekend and suddenly 55,000 endpoints go dark. A ransomware screen takes over. Operations freeze in 60 plus countries. That's what happens when cybersecurity programs are either non-existent or they don't deliver under pressure. These examples are reminders that cyber risk does not wait. It just shows up. And when it does, everything, reputation, customers, revenues can be on the line. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Khurram Naqvi. I work with global banks, fintechs, and consultancies to build cybersecurity programs that go beyond tick box compliance and actually protect the business when the alarms go off. This session is built to give you clarity, not jargons. And here's what we will cover. Why cyber risk is a business risk. How banking and fintech systems actually work under the hood. Cybersecurity essentials, clear and jargon-free. The core pillar, assets, threats, vulnerabilities, and environments, and how to bring it all together with controls and incident response. But before we start, there's a disclaimer. Everything I share here is based on my own research, my own learning, and my own hands-on experience. It's entirely independent of any employers, past or present. These are my view and mine only. So shall we begin?
Sure.
Right. So let's talk about the cyber risk first, and let's take a moment to rethink what we mean by cyber risk. It's not just the data breaches or scary headlines. It's much more real and measurable. And in banking and fintech, cyber risk can disrupt business operations, It can threaten financial stability. It can hurt market reputation. And last but not the least, it can trigger regulatory action. Take Stripe, for example. One outage meant payment stopped, merchants panicked, and money was lost every minute. Or Revolut, for that matter, fined under GDPR after a customer data breach. That wasn't only an IT issue, it was a compliance and trust matter. So here's the key message. Cyber risk is equal to business risk. And it usually shows up in 4 ways, not necessarily in this order though. First one is revenue loss, emerging from downtime or failed payments. And then compliance fines rooted to regulations like GDPRs and DORA penalties, the General Data Protection Regulations and Digital Operations Resiliency Act in Europe, in European Union. And then customer churn, of course. Well, your users are going to quickly leave if they feel unsafe in your environment. And then reputation damage. Once the trust is broken, customers may never turn up. So these aren't just the rare cases. They happen all the time. And we have just witnessed a week ago when I was mentioning about the Qantas airline. So a small misstep in the API security can go viral on social media tomorrow. That's why understanding cyber risk and embedding it in the business is the very first pillar of a strong cybersecurity program. So when you picture cybersecurity, what comes to your mind? एक dingy सी space नजर आती है, ऐसा लगता है कि cyber criminals जो हैं वो एक basement के अंदर बैठे हुए हैं, and we see tech people in the dark rooms fighting hackers in the hoodies, right? So this was the old view, not anymore. Cybersecurity is now a boardroom topic. And why is that? Because when things fail, it's not just the system, it's the trust, it's the money, the reputation and compliance all goes on stake. And it got promoted in the agenda very recently because of these reasons. Number one, regulations. The Financial Conduct Authority in UK, the GDPR and DORA across European Union, they demand proof of resilience. And you fail, you are doomed. You get slapped with big painful penalties. And then come money. One breach can simply wipe 15% of your share price, and the lawsuits are going to follow. And finally, the reputation. In finance, trust is going to take years to build and will take seconds to lose. But why banks and fintechs are prime target in the first place? What's so special about banking and finance? ऐसा इसमें क्या है कि साइबर क्रिमिनल्स को जो है वो इतनी ज्यादा जो है इसके अंदर अट्रैक्शन नजर आती है? Because banks hold money, पैसा है इनके पास. They hold data. They hold critical system. And fintech move fast with API and cloud. That's the insult upon the injury. So that is great for growth, by the way, but risky in the long term, especially if your controls are lagging. So cybersecurity today is not just technical, it's a business decision. Leaders who don't get this, they are flying blind. अब कुछ misconceptions हैं top leadership के अंदर. One of the biggest challenges in banking and fintech is not technology. It's actually the mindset. Incidents and regulators reviews keeps showing the same story and the same theme, same blind spot over and over, again and again. And that is not from the lack of care, by the way, but from not understanding how cyber risk is evolving. कुछ कॉमन मिथ्स जो हैं वो इस तरह की हैं. वी आर टू स्मॉल टू बी टारगेट. यार हम तो इतने छोटे हैं, हमें किसने टारगेट करना है? वेल, हैकर्स आर यूजिंग बॉट्स and they scan for weak spots over and over again and again. So a small glitch, a small glitch can hit you really hard. And then the next one है वो ये कि our cloud provider handles our security. Well, your cloud provider is actually your infrastructure provider. You are the one who control access, data, encryption, and that is still your accountability, not the accountability of your cloud providers. Your customer is not going to buy the excuse that we gave your data to Amazon or GCP or Azure and they are responsible. No, that's not going to fly. So that misconception is also not a good, reason. Then the third one is we have never been breached. Well, silent breaches do exist. Attackers can sit undetected for months. And it's like saying कि मेरा घर में कभी आग नहीं लगी इससे पहले, so I'm not going to test my fire alarms. The fire risk is always there in your house, so you need to check your fire alarms, and so is the risk of cyber attack. So you need to be, taking measures for that, regardless whether a breach has happened in the past or not. And then last but not the least, and that's my favorite one, we are compliant, so we are safe. That's bad news. Compliance is not equal to security. Passing ISO 27001 or PCI DSS audits does not mean that you are safe. Paper controls often fail in practice. So compliance and security can be two different things. You can be compliant, but you cannot be necessarily secure. And what is the cost of these blind spots? When you have such misconception at the top leadership, you have weaker detection, you have slow response, and sometimes catastrophic loss of trust and loss of capital. So let me take you back in June 2017. Let me take you through a story of an extinction event. It was a sunny day in Maidenhead, just outside London. The Maersk leadership team is mid-meeting with when one of them notices their laptop is restarting. Well, that's not a big deal, right? Then another one restart, and then another one restart. And within 15 minutes, as they drive back to their IT hub, every system in 60 countries has gone dark. Emails dead, laptops bricked, ports are standing still, ships without instruction, and 50 billion company essentially paralyzed within minutes. All this because of NotPetya, a piece of malware that wasn't even targeting them directly. They called it an extinction event as attributed by Maersk's then CISO Andy Jones in his book, Tales of a Cyber Weapon. And that's the message I want to convey. Cyber risk is not an IT inconvenience. It's existential. If you are in banking or fintech, where everything from transaction to trust lives in digital rails, this is a reality which you just cannot ignore. So let's close this module by looking at what happens when cyber risk is ignored. Let's take an example of Capital One in 2019. एक छोटी सी क्लाउड मिसकॉन्फ़िगरेशन थी जिसने 100 मिलियन कस्टमर रिकॉर्ड्स को एक्सपोज कर दिया था. $80 million fine plus lawsuits, one misset permission and massive fallout. And then Wirecard 2020. It was insider fraud, not even hacking. Falsified accounts led to 24 billion euro collapse. Weak governance can be as deadly as weak firewalls. And then Lloyds and HSBC, 2017, the distributed denial of service floods took applications online. DDoS होता है कि जब आप बहुत सारा डाटा जो है वो एक सिस्टम के ऊपर भेजना शुरू कर देते हैं, वो सिस्टम ओवरवेल्म हो जाता है उस डाटा से. Customers got locked out. Trust hit hard. So what's the lesson in it? That cyber ignorance is costly, it's chaotic, and it's very public. Because recovery costs 10 times more than prevention. And because reputation takes years to build, but only seconds to lose. So let me ask you, what makes tech tech? टेक्नोलॉजी है क्या बैंकिंग के अंदर? What do apps, payments and messages they all have in common? And the answer is networks. If there is no network, there is no technology, plain and simple. But how does it work? Well, every device has an IP address. Your request hops through the routers across the internet to a server and back. Feels like magic, but it's just infrastructure. And there are three types of networks. There's a LAN, which is local Wi-Fi at home office. Then there is WANs, the wide area internet. Then there's secure tunnels, VPNs and TLS encryptions to protect traffic. But why this matters in banking and fintech? It matters because it moves sensitive data, payments, logins, account information, and it must be encrypted, validated, and monitored. For examples, logging into a banking app. Your phone talks to the bank server through a router. TLS encrypts the traffic, firewalls and intrusion detection guards it. If any layer fails, one login can be an open door. And fintech adds APIs, linking payments, credit scoring, and more. If APIs are not secured, you don't just leak data, you lose control. So what's the bottom line? Technology only works because of the invisible web of secure connections, moving data with speed and trust. So let's see that why do we need leaders to understand technology? Running a bank without technical knowledge is like flying a plane without knowing the cockpit. Obviously dangerous and costly. In the past, leaders could get away by saying, leave it to the IT, but not anymore. In banking and fintech, technology is business and business is technology. Cloud, APIs, apps, all real-time data. If leaders don't understand the basics, they can't ask the right questions. And if they can't ask the right questions, they can't manage risks. For example, a bank may be considering acquiring a shiny new AI tool, artificial intelligence, the flavor of the month. Questions would be, does it integrate securely? What if the vendor fails? Without awareness, leaders say yes blindly, and that's dangerous. Or the another example could be the implication of cloud outage in AWS or Azure. Do leaders know the impact on payments? Are their backups ready? If not, panic will follow. Leaders don't need to code. They don't need to learn how to code and C++ and all those stuff. But they must know what to ask. Regulators like FCA in UK and DORA and GDPR all demand boards to own the technical and the cyber risk. So technical fluency is now a leadership skill. It helps the leader ask smarter questions, make better decisions, bridge business and IT. So modern business wins not through the tech stack itself, but through leadership that understands it. So what is cybersecurity really for? Cybersecurity is actually equals to protecting the value created by the technology. It's not the passwords or firewall. It's about protecting value, the trust your technology creates for customers and users. Think about a fintech. The value is not in the app itself, but by making sure that it keeps your data confidential, keeps your transaction accurate, and stays up and running 24/7. And that's CIA triad. If data is stolen, trust vanishes. Imagine your salary information is on a public display. That's your confidentiality biting dust. If the bank balances or reports can be altered, then the integrity goes out of window. And what about availability? If your app crashes on payday every time, every month, users are going to leave in flocks. So trust is not about keeping hackers out. It's about keeping the lights on. For example, a fintech launches a sleek payment app. Then a breach hits. The data export, the rating crashes, regulators steps in and users start deleting it in droves. Why? Because the trust was broken. That's the heart of cybersecurity, protecting business value, keeping technology safe, running, and trusted. Okay, so time to learn a bit of a lingo of cybersecurity. Because if you don't speak the language of risk, you don't know when you are in danger. There are four keywords: threats, vulnerabilities, attacks, and risks to be understood. And to be understood well, they are connected, they are not same. Let's just think about a house. थ्रेट जो है वो एक चोर है जो कि बाहर फिर रहा है मोहल्ले के अंदर, और आपका जो घर है वो ऑब्वियसली उस मोहल्ले में है. वनरेबिलिटी जो है वो आपके घर की एक टूटी हुई खिड़की है. वनरेबिलिटी इज एन अनलॉक विंडो. एंड देन अटैक इज बर्गलर climbing in and stealing. And the risk is the chance of it happening and how bad the outcome is. So threat, the burglar in the neighborhood. Vulnerability is the unlocked 2TV window. Attack, burglar climbing in and stealing, चोरी हो जाए. And risk, कितना chance है इसका इस event के होने का. And how bad the outcome is, कितनी बड़ी चोरी हुई है. Now in banking and fintech, threats would be the hackers, the attackers, the rogue employees in your organizations who are bent towards delivering harm to your organization. And obviously the natural disasters as well. Floods aate hain, tufan aate hain, aandiyan aati hain. All these natural disasters are also counted as threats. Then the vulnerabilities, unpatched softwares, the weak passwords, the phishing prone staff. All these are vulnerabilities as well. किसी ने जो है सॉफ्टवेयर को अपडेट नहीं किया, तो 3 महीने पहले अपडेट आई भी थी, आपने उसको इम्प्लीमेंट नहीं किया, वनरेबिलिटी जो है वो मौजूद है आपके सिस्टम में. आपने पासवर्ड जो है वो वीक पासवर्ड रखा हुआ है, ABC 123, पासवर्ड 123, इस तरह के आपने पासवर्ड लिखे हुए हैं, एडमिन आपने पासवर्ड रखे हुए हैं. दीज आर योर वनरेबिलिटीज. फिशिंग प्रोन स्टाफ, आपके पास एक ईमेल आती है जिसके अंदर लिखा हुआ है जी इस लिंक के ऊपर आप क्लिक करें और आपको जो है वो पता नहीं क्या मिल जाएगा, आप उस पर क्लिक करते हैं, ऑफ यू गो. अटैक्स जो है वो रैंसमवेयर है, डाटा थेफ्ट, सिस्टम टेम्परिंग. These are all the examples of threat. Risks, that how likely, how damaging, and who is impacted. That is the risk from the business land. So why all of this? Why it matters? If we confuse a threat with a vulnerability, we will spend fixing the wrong thing. Therefore, understanding these four terms helps leader ask the sharp questions, prioritize fixes, avoid false comfort from compliance checklist. And cybersecurity, by the way, has got endless jargons. But these four words, threats, vulnerability, attacks, and risk, they are the foundation. You get them right, you are already thinking like a pro, and you are already ahead of the curve. And now, what is the difference between governance and management in cybersecurity? They sound similar, but they are not. Management is doing things right. And governance is about making sure that the right things are done by the right people for the right reason. So governance set the direction, that what are the priorities, who is accountable, how is success measured, and when do we step in if things are going in the wrong direction. It's about accountability, alignment, and oversight. Not the firewalls or patching, but who owns the risk at a strategic level. In banking and fintech, your table includes the board, the risk and audit committees, the CISOs, Chief Information Security Officer, the CIOs, Chief Information Officer, compliance, legals, and internal audits. If one of them is missing, decisions stall, or those decisions will happen in a vacuum. And why it all matters? Because without governance, cybersecurity becomes reactive. Teams are working in silos, risks get missed and breaches trigger finger pointing. So good governance flip the script where we have clear accountability, performance tracked with KPIs, the key performance indicators, KRIs, the key risk indicators and dashboards. And we have reporting tested through tabletop exercises. A solid framework turns cybersecurity into a business enabler, aligned with growth and not a blocker. So what happens when cybersecurity and business strategy, they don't talk to each other? You get friction. Product teams push features and security says, sorry, not safe, red light. And obviously the progress is going to stall. But alignment flips the script. Security enables business by joining the journey early, not bolting on later. Let's consider an example. A fintech wants instant loans using AI for real-time credit checks, right? So if security is brought into the mix after the launch, there will be no privacy review, no fraud plan, no API checks, and this is a perfect recipe of a compliance nightmare. And conversely, if security is in the room from day one, they have not been brought to the party late, they have been there from day one, then encryption is planned, anomaly detection gets added, APIs are secured, launch is fast and launch is safe. So how do we make alignment real? We have risk appetite statements to define acceptable risk. We have cybersecurity roadmaps so the teams see what is coming. We have cross-functional forums for product teams, for IT, for risk and security to plan all this together. When business understands cyber and cyber understands business, trust builds. Security becomes a value driver, not just a cost. And that's the magic. So when a cyber incident happens or a cyber attack hits, who is in charge? And let me tell you, if you can't answer this question in 5 seconds, you have already got a problem. Because governance only works when roles are crystal clear. For instance, CISO setting the strategy owns the risk. CIO, Chief Information Officer, keeps IT running securely. Risk tracking the operational impact. Compliance ensuring FCA, GDPR, DORA, PCI DSS are met. Internal audit, who are testing those controls which are in place and in practice. Each of these matters, but only if the lines are drawn. For example, it's a Friday night, suspicious activity happens on your payment gateway. Who do you call first? How fast do executive, legals, PR, regulators get pulled in? Good governance makes your escalation predefined so that there is no scrambling. It is extensively tested via tabletop exercises and well documented in an incident response plan. Why? Because in a breach, seconds matters. If people waste time thinking who is responsible, well, then the attackers have already won. So let's be honest. Some companies say they are doing security, but it's actually a chaos. One team is writing the policy, another is installing the tools, and the third one takes compliance checklist. But no one is asking, what's the plan? What are we actually building? Because without a big picture, cybersecurity becomes reactive, always fighting fires, fragmented. Policies are saying one thing and technology is doing another thing. Wasteful, that is budget spent on tools that don't address real risk. So what is the big picture here? It is a strategic view, the 30,000 foot altitude where a program needs vision and mission to say why it exists, what security actually means, because secure can mean different to different companies and different organizations and different industries. stakeholders and governance, which tells who owns what, workflows and integration to show how risk and reporting flows, and metrics and improvement to demonstrate how success is measured. Without these, you don't have a program. You just have disconnected controls, arbitrary controls scattered here and there, and delivering nothing, to be honest. In fintech especially, scale magnifies the risk. You scale users, but you don't scale the security. That's how breaches happens. Not from lack of effort, but because of lack of direction. That's why we start with the big picture to turn security from a reaction into a connected, measurable, business-aligned program. And can I ask you another question? I'm asking too many questions now, but let's do that. Can you build up a strong house if plumbing and wiring and walls are designed by teams who never talk? Of course not. Same goes with cybersecurity. You don't just need you just don't need the right parts. Those parts, those teams, they need to work together as well. A cybersecurity program is a system of connected parts, and those parts are number one, strategy. The strategy is your why and your what. What are we protecting and why does it matter? How much risk are we ready to accept? Then comes your governance. Governance is your who. Who owns what? Who approves the exceptions? Who reports to the board? Then your processes. Processes is your how. Onboarding, patching, access reviews, repeatable workflows. That's not the guesswork. And tooling is your with what. With what is your firewalls, your SIEM tools, your IDRs, your IDS, your endpoint protections. Useful only if they are tied to the process. And your metrics. Metrics are your proof, your key performance indicators, your key risk indicators to show attacks reduced, incidents detected faster. And last but not the least, your feedback. Feedback is your adaptation. Lessons learned feeding back into the strategy as threats and business evolution. So it's like a loop. Strategy feeds into the governance. Governance feeds into the process. Process into the tools. Tools into the metrics. Metrics into the feedback, which goes back into the strategy. So from a fintech perspective, a payment startup probably jumps from 5,000 users to 500,000 users in about 6 months. If the security program did not plan to scale, the technology might run, but controls will break. And a real program is not just tools or policies. It's a living system that adapts with the business. So let's see that what does a security program look like in action? We have covered the building blocks like strategy, governance, process, tools, and metrics. But what does that look like in real life? In a mature program, security is not the team that says no to everything. It's the team that asks smart questions early, set the guardrails, and helps the business move fast and move safely. Sign of a healthy security programs are number one, when developers involve security, when developers involve security during design, not after the launch, not during the launch. That is built in. That security is built in. It is not an add-on. It's not bolted on. That's the sign of a healthy program, when risks are described in plain business language, not full of techie fluff to confuse the hell out of the leaders who react to impact, not to your jargons. Then number two sign of a healthy security program is when incident response is practiced and understood in safe environment, not in the middle of an attack. ऐसा ना हो कि आप अपनी प्लेबुक जो है वो अटैक के अंदर ही टेस्ट कर रहे हो कि जी अब अटैक हो गया, अब देखना है ये चलती है कि नहीं चलती, आपका रिस्पांस जो है वो ठीक होता है कि नहीं होता. You need to practice it in advance in a safe environment so that you know exactly how you are going to react when the day comes. Number 3 is when metrics are not the gut feeling leading to the decisions. These are the real metrics. They are giving you the real values like your KPIs and KRIs, who have been developed by some deep thinking behind it. And number 4, when feedbacks connects everything. Your strategy, your tools, and your processes adapt as threats and business evolve. Threat landscape and business landscape is evolving all the time. The tools and the strategy and the processes which are valid today, they may not be valid tomorrow. So you need to adapt all the time. So that is cybersecurity in action. It's not theory or it's not the checklist. It's the difference between an organization that panics when an attack happens and the one that responds in a structured and an effective manner. So how can you protect something if you don't even know what it is? The first question in cybersecurity is not what is a threat. The first question is, what are the assets we are protecting? A cyber asset is anything that with value in the digital world. Not just what you can touch, but it's actually what attackers actually want. For example, number 1 category is your data. Data could be your customer information, the information around your transactions, credit histories, and passwords. These are the crown jewel in banking and fintech. Then comes your people, especially privileged users like DevOps administrator, database administrators, finance staff. If they are compromised, attackers go straight to core system. Then the third category is your systems like applications and servers and cloud databases. If they go down, your business is going to stop anyway. And then last but not the least are your credentials, your passwords, your APIs, keys, your tokens. After all, why break in by smashing the window if you can just enter through the door by using a stolen key? So your credentials are like your keys to your systems. So in fintech, if the GitHub credentials and DevOps engineers with full production access get stolen, the attackers could inject malicious codes. They can disable your fraud detection. They can steal your sensitive data. They can even wipe out the balances. So what is the asset here? Is the asset the engineer or their laptop or their credentials? Well, the answer is all the above. To protect the assets, you need to know what they are. You need to know why they matter and who owns them. Because if no one's own an asset, no one protects it. Now, for a bank, what is more valuable? The customer database or the old office printer sitting in the corner getting dust for God knows how many years? The easy answer is the database. Hang on, but there's still a catch. The value is not fixed. It depends upon the context. In cybersecurity, we don't just ask what an asset is. We ask what role it plays in the business. Let's consider two systems, a test server versus a payment API. Both are systems. But if they go down, the impact is completely different. Obviously, the payment API is going to have more impact compared to a test server because one is production and the other one is in the test environment. So 3 questions define value. How does it support the business? What risk does it create if lost, leaked, or misused? And is it attractive to the attackers? For instance, a third-party loan scoring engine might seem very minor. But if it misfires, the fake loans get approved or good customers get rejected. That means financial loss, regulatory trouble, and reputational damage. Suddenly, it is a high value assets. So the takeaway is that an asset value is defined by its role in the business outcome. And in security, in cybersecurity, value is your priority. We don't protect everything equally. We protect what matters most. So we have defined cyber assets and their value. The next question is, how do we protect them? And no, the answer is not buying more tools. It's a structured approach. Step one, identify your critical assets. Have an extensive inventory that documents your databases, your APIs, your applications, your admins, devices, backups, everything. And ask yourself, what really keeps the business running? And step two would be link assets to the business function. Don't just say web servers. Instead say payments API. If it fails, customers can't check out. Use a business impact analysis, which will describe what happens if an asset is compromised, how fast we must recover it. And step three is build awareness, because inventories track ownership. The BIAs sets priorities and disaster recovery plans guide the response. So awareness is absolutely necessary with these tools. And lastly, classify the CIA triad. For confidentiality, ask, does it hold sensitive data? For integrity, you need to ask, does accuracy matters here? Balances and trades information, how accurate it needs to be. And for availability, does downtime stop the business? So each asset gets a risk profile and controls follow that profile. For instance, if a chatbot is offline for 2 hours, it may just be an inconvenience, right? But if payment database remains offline for 5 minutes, that's chaos, revenue loss, regulator calls, and angry customers. So we don't protect them equally. The stronger protections go to the most critical. Therefore, asset protection is risk-based and it's business-driven. The most critical the asset, the stronger your protection is. So now, what keeps your cybersecurity professionals up at night? They are not just the malwares or hackers, but threats. A threat is anything that can exploit a weakness and cause damage. For instance, that could be a hacker, that could be a power outage, and that could be an employee hitting the delete button by mistake. So there are 4 categories of threat here. One is your malicious category, which involves the hackers, the nation states, the cybercrime gangs. And in fintech, they target data, they target payments, and they target internal APIs. Then you have your accidental threats. These are the mistakes like sending data to the wrong customer, forgetting an API update, or misconfiguring a cloud bucket. And then your environmental threats, fires, floods, outages. If systems or backup fail, the business is going to stop. And then your third party. If a know your customer KYC provider gets breached, your fintech takes the blame. Customer don't care whose fault it was. For them, you are the provider and you should be held for accountability. In banking and fintech, the attack surface is massive. And these threats are not just technical. They are business disruptions. They are the reputation destroyers. They are the trust killers. So what is the point of spotting a threat if no one knows what to do about that? Many teams, by the way, stumble here. They detect issues, but they can't explain them in a way that would drive actions. The challenge is not just detecting threat, it's anticipating them and explaining them in plain English. How to do it, by the way. We need to make it business focused. ऐसा नहीं बोलना कि हमें CVE 2024 5 3 6 7 मिली और ये CV जो है इस पे हमें काम करना है. You don't say it like that. We say we found CVE 20243578 and it can be exploited by the man in the middle attack. That is one way of saying that, which is not a very, very easy to comprehend. Or the other way of saying is that is we found a flaw that could let someone steal customer data and we caught it before anyone else did. If you deliver your statement in this way, your leadership will be more attentive and they will be more responsive. Then you use credible intelligence. We rely on facts, credible research reports, and not guesses and gut feelings. We speak clearly to the leaders, focus on the impact, customer disruption, regulatory breach, loss of service. Be concise what the threat is, what could happen, and what's our plan. Use threat modeling scenarios. Think like an attacker. Use stride or attack trees to map paths to their goals. Run what if exercises. What if our payment API is hit with credential stuffing? What if our SMS provider goes offline? And what if a fake know your customer entry slips through the cracks? You need to do all this to anticipate and communicate the threats in an effective manner. So let's go back to the NotPetya. Do you know Maersk, which we just touched upon in the beginning? Do you know Maersk was not the target of that attack? उन बेचारों पे तो अटैक हुआ भी नहीं था. The malware was aimed at a Ukraine's financial infrastructure. But through one IT link, a server running in Ukrainian accounting software, it spread. It spread across networks, it spread across borders, and it spread across industries. Maersk was unfortunately caught in the blast radius. And the cost was over 300 million US dollars. This was not about weak passwords or bad hygiene. It was a collateral damage in a digital war. So the lessons for banks and fintechs are you don't need to be the target to be hit. Threat analysis is not just what do hackers want from us, but also what we are connected to, what's in our supply chain. Could we survive if a weaponized threat hits us indirectly? Now we have talked about the threat, but the thing is, a threat alone does not cause damage. Threat आपका कुछ नहीं कर सकता अगर आपके पास vulnerability ना हो तो. It needs vulnerabilities. It needs a weakness to exploit. ये ऐसा ही है जैसे आपके बाहर जो है वो तूफान आया हुआ है, तो तूफान जो है वो थ्रेट है. थ्रेट इज योर स्टॉर्म. वर्नेबिलिटी जो है वो आपके छत में सुराख है. दैट्स अ होल इन योर रूफ. और अटैक जो है वो बारिश के पानी का, तूफान के पानी का छत से अंदर आ जाना है. और रिस्क जो है दैट इज द डैमेज कॉज्ड in your house because of this event happening. So if there was no hole in the roof, there would be no flood in your house despite how strong the storm is outside. So your vulnerability has been exploited by that storm, the hole in the roof. So where do these vulnerabilities live? They live everywhere. They live in technology, they live in processes, they live among people. Let's say technology. What would be the vulnerabilities in your technology? That would be your unpatched systems, your insecure APIs, your misconfigured cloud, and your old libraries. For instance, a fintech used a legacy third-party text tool with an outdated Java plugin. They didn't build it, but it became their pain. It became their problem. And then the vulnerabilities live in the processes. Weak vendors onboarding, no access reviews, poor change control, all of these are the example of your weak processes. For example, a junior developer pushed a configuration with hard-coded passwords. The attackers later used it to scrape the data. And then it lives among your people as well. Human mistakes are very common. Password reuses, phishing clicks, sharing credentials, ये सब होता है. लोगों ने जो है अपने वो पासवर्ड जो है वो एडमिन बने हुए होते हैं और एडमिन का पासवर्ड एडमिन ही रखा हुआ होता है. पासवर्ड का अपना पासवर्ड 123 रख लेंगे, अपनी डेट ऑफ बर्थ रख लेंगे. You know, these are the और फिर उन पासवर्ड्स को चेंज भी ना करना. So these are very real mistakes which are happening all the time. Phishing links के ऊपर click करना. For instance, a support staff clicked a fake compliance email. A keylogger stole their login, which had direct access to payments, and game over, boom, gone. So the key point is vulnerabilities don't always look dangerous on the face. They can sit for months until they get exploited. So vulnerability is not just reacting, it's anticipating. It's not just the code that breaks, It's people may forget, process gets skipped, and configuration can get missed. If you only scan software but ignore human and business weakness, you will still get breached. Now, most company finds a vulnerability. They panic, they patch fast, and they move on until the next one pops up. But the mature organization treat vulnerability management as a business process, not as firefighting. They follow 4 principles. Number 1, they build a structured process. They establish asset discovery, which enables them to understand what do they own. They enable scanning, which leads them to their weaknesses. They track and patch vulnerabilities with reviews and metrics. For example, mature banks run weekly scans, monthly patch cycles, and urgent fixes for critical CVs. The second one is they prioritize by impact, not severity. Not all high risks are equal. A high bug on a development sandbox is not equal to a high bug on your login page. Mature organizations always ask, if exploited, what is the business impact? The third one is they assign ownership. They know who is going to do what, who is going to find the security gap, who is going to validate it, and who is going to own the risk. That's why mature fintechs appoint security champions in each team to keep remediation moving. They measure and communicate. Leaders don't care about scan counts. They care about time to patch the criticals, percentage of issues closed on time, exposure of customer-facing systems. And here's the mindset shift. Vulnerability management is not just a technical task. It's like finance tracking debt. Except here you are tracking risk. You don't fix everything at once. You fix what matters most, stay accountable, and then repeat. Now, the cost of complacency. Back to the fateful NotPetya. One of the most destructive cyber attack ever, which again bizarrely did not rely on a secret being leaked or cutting edge exploits. It used a known window vulnerability with patch already available months earlier. But like many organizations at that time, some environments had not completed their patching. That gap allowed the malware to spread globally. And the lesson is not to blame them. It's about how easy it is for routine hygiene to slip through the cracks. This wasn't about sophistication. This was about complacency. And it's not unique to NotPetya, by the way. In fintech and banking, with constant system changes and complex environments, even small gaps in patching or approval can trigger major incidents. So where does your technology live now? Not just one place. It can be in your office, it can be on your laptop, it can be on the cloud servers overseas, thousands of miles away from you. Your cyber environment is a full ecosystem. Your hardwares, laptops, servers, routers, your cloud, AWS and Azure and GCP, your applications, your payments, CRM, trading tools, users and networks. This is where your technology lives. And that's where the risks live as well. In finance, obviously, there are three models. These three models are not limited to finance, but obviously they are related to finance as well. One is on-premise. Traditional banks with data centers and guarded servers. Secure, but slow and costly to scale. Then your public cloud, where most fintechs begin, fast and agile, but more exposure and less direct control. And then comes your hybrid. This is with most global banks, legacy plus cloud, flexible but doubles the complexity. Each environment has different security challenge. Therefore, we need to always ask, what is the attack surface here? Which models apply? Traditional trust or zero trust? What compliance rules applies? The GDPR, the PCI DSS, the DORA. Because a fintech on AWS or Azure may need a very different strategy than a bank on mainframes. And if you are in hybrid, you need a unified plan or the gaps are going to appear. Today's IT admittedly feels like a jungle. You have laptops in cafes, you have applications in the cloud, you have old servers in the dusty rooms, and your regulators are watching. They are keeping an eye like a hawk. And the way forward is step by step. You need to know your boundaries. In the past, it was the firewalls, the office walls. Now it's virtual. And then it is shifting as well. We need to map your environment, cloud, hybrid, or legacy, and understand your data flows and trust zones. You need to layer your defenses, defense in depth. For identity and access, to start with multi-factor authentication and least privilege. Networks need segmentation with VPNs and the firewalls, the web applications firewalls, to limit movement. You need monitoring, which is essential to make sure it is in the plan. Tools like SIEM and EDR catch weaknesses before attackers do. And do not forget to standardize. Do not build servers by hand. Use infrastructure as a code. Automate patching. And make sure that you apply security baselines so systems are secure by default. And last but not the least, align with the compliance. Again, your DORAs and your PCI DSS, your GDPR, your Sarbanes-Oxley's, SOX, etc. All demand resilience, vendor control, and data protection. Shared responsibility is a model, but accountability is always going to be yours. All right, so let's imagine this, that you have identified your risk and know where the crown jewels are. So what's next? Do you just cross your fingers and hope? Of course not. You put controls in place, like locks on the doors and fire drills in the school. In cybersecurity, controls are the tools that turn strategy into action. They bridge the gap between we must protect this and here's how we will protect it. There are four main types of controls. Number one, preventative controls. To stop attacks before they even start. Multi-factor authentication is a good example. Even if your password is stolen, access is blocked without the second factor. Now, next one is detective control. To flag when something has gone wrong. like an alert for a login attempt from an unusual location. Then your corrective control that steps in after the incidents, such as restoring backups after ransomware or isolating an infected laptop. And then last but not the least, compensating controls. These are the alternatives when the ideal option is not available. If you can't encrypt a legacy system, you restrict access and you monitor it closely. In practice, a neobank might use preventative fraud filters on payments while layering in AI to detect suspicious behaviors. A trading app may not block a compromised account immediately, but can run a corrective script to freeze suspicious transactions. So controls aren't compliance checkboxes. They make risk manageable and ensure the organizations can respond effectively. And not all controls are equal as well. The real skill is knowing where to focus first. Again, think of a house. You don't bar every window, just the one most at risk, normally on the ground floor. Same logic in cybersecurity as well. We start by asking what data matters most. Is it personal identifiable information, the PII, regulated, or the payment data? Use BIA, business impact analysis, to find out. What processes can't fail? Real-time payments or trading gateways? Even minutes of downtime can mean big losses. What is the actual threat surface here? No point guarding against floods if lightning is the real challenge here. Now, in practice, a cloud fintech may prioritize CSPM and API security, and a hybrid bank might focus on DLP, the data loss prevention and identity federation. So you need to do your defense in depth, but address the risks first. Secure the crown jewels and the riskiest entry points. And remember, not everything is equal. So too many firms think that once they install a firewall or write a policy, the job is done. That's wrong. Controls are not set and forget. They need active care. Governance, testing, continuous improvement. Here's how to make your controls stick. First, governance. Someone must clearly know and own each control. Roles and accountabilities must be defined. In banks, the responsibility often sits with the CISO or the risk committee. Secondly, testing. Controls only matter if they work in practice. Penetration tests and vulnerability scans and red team exercises and automated validations are all ways to keep them effective. And third, continuous improvement. Threats evolve, tools changes, and regulations shift. That is why we track metrics such as the number of alerts, how fast incidents are handled, and how often controls fail in testing. These regulators expect this as well, by the way. ISO 27001 requires regular reviews of control effectiveness. PCI DSS, the payment card industry's digital security, requires security systems to be tested on an ongoing basis. The DORA, that requires risk management to be continuous and adaptable. So the key takeaway is that controls are not just IT tasks. They are business assets. And like assets, they need care and attention, not just a checklist tick. Now, what is the incident response? It is a structured plan for spotting when something is wrong, responding in the right order, and recovering quickly so the business keeps going. It applies to malware, phishing, and fraud attempts, and even outages caused by human error. For example, a fintech startup ignored alerts for hours, and by the time they reacted, the customer accounts were already being drained. No plan, no escalation, just panic. It took 2 days to regain control with financial loss, regulator troubles, and reputational damage. So why incident response or IR is essential in finance? Think of IR like a emergency service. When the alarm goes off, they don't guess, they follow the plan. In finance, this is non-negotiable. You handle regulated customer data. Regulators expect minutes, not days and not weeks. Regulators demand tested incident response plan. So incident response is not about blocking every attack. It's about having a clear plan so you stay ready, resilient, alert, and calm when it matters the most. So let's take an example. It's a Monday morning. You walk in your office with your coffee and suddenly the trading platform is frozen. Phones are ringing, customers are frustrated, and someone whispers in your ear, could this be a cyber attack? If you have an incident response playbook, you don't panic, you follow the steps. First come detection and reporting. How do we know something is wrong? An alert coming from monitoring, a strange login, a customer call. The key is that everyone knows exactly where and how to report. No confusion, no wasted time whatsoever. Next is assessment and classification. Is this real or a false alarm? That happens as well. What systems are affected? Is customer data involved? Here we judge severity. A minor login glitch versus a high severity breach with stolen data. Then comes containment. This is the firefighting mode. Isolate compromised system, disable accounts, preserve logs. In banking, if a fraud engine is hit, traffic can be rerouted and backup systems activated to stop the bleeding. Once stable, we move to the investigation and eradication. This is a detective work. Who did it? How? And who else? And what else was touched? Using forensic tools and logs, the goal is to find the root cause and close the gap. And then comes recovery. Systems are brought back online cautiously, backups restored, integrity verified, and everything monitored to prevent re-entry. And finally, the communication. What do you tell customers? What do you tell regulators, your board, or your media? Strong playbooks have ready-made templates for breach notices and regulator reports. And that saves precious time. In fintech, clarity and speed can make or break trust. So an incident response playbook turn chaos into order. Everyone know their roles. It keeps the organization calm, fast, and effective. And what is the difference between a company that survives a cyber attack and the one that collapses? It's not luck. It's actually the maturity. And in the end, the maturity is not about buying tools. It's about knowing your weak spots, rehearsing your strengths, and ensuring your response is calm, it's fast, and it's reliable when it matters the most. So let me ask you another question, and this is the last question about NotPetya. What if your entire network, every endpoint, server and domain controller was suddenly gone? Most incident response plans are built around containment and communication. But what happens if you can't even reach each other? No emails, no Teams, no Active Directory. And your golden images, your backups, they're either inaccessible or they're ineffective. That's what companies faced during the NotPetya crisis. Some had IR playbooks, but the playbooks were stored on the very systems that were compromised. Others had backup, but no way to verify if they were clean or even retrievable. So let me challenge you. Have you tested a complete offline recovery? Can your SOC, Security Operations Center, operate without digital communications? Have you ever practiced printing playbook on paper? This isn't dramatic fiction. This is a scenario lifted from the lessons of NotPetya. If your incident response plan assumes infrastructure will survive, then it may already been broken. So that's a wrap. Cybersecurity is not just defense. It's trust, leadership, and resilience. Takeaways to keep close. Cyber is a business enabler, not a blocker. Proactiveness beats reactiveness always. Ask the tough questions. That's what smart leaders do. And remember, security is a culture. It's not a checkbox. Thank you for joining me and see you on the safe side. Over to you, Imran.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Khurram. It's a very informative session indeed. Let's start a Q&A session. हम क्वेश्चन आंसर कर लेते हैं. कुछ चैट बॉक्स में भी आपके पास खुरम आ रहे होंगे चीज़ें, और उसके साथ साथ हम आप लोग अपना हैंड रेस कर लें तो बाबर यू कैन अनम्यूट द माइक, तो हम क्वेश्चंस ले लेंगे इस सेशन में. I think first question in the chat box, what will do supply chain vulnerability plays in
Okay, मैं इसको read कर रहा हूँ. What role do supply chain vulnerabilities play in modern cyber attacks, and how should companies mitigate them, especially considering incidents like MERS, NotPetya attack through MEDOC in 2017 and later cases such as SolarWinds? Right, ये बड़ा जबरदस्त सवाल है. होता क्या है कि obviously जब आप बैंक हैं या आप कोई और भी आप ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, मगर आपके साथ एक सप्लाई चेन कनेक्टेड है, तो वो सप्लाई चेन जो है, जो रिस्क उनके पास आ रहा है वो रिस्क आपके पास भी आ सकता है. जो थ्रेट्स उनके लिए हैं वो आपके लिए भी हैं, जो वल्नरेबिलिटीज उनकी हैं वो आपके लिए भी हैं, ऑल्दो वो आपके सिस्टम के अंदर नहीं है, मगर जो सिनेरियोज वो फेस कर रहे हैं वो सिनेरियोज आप भी फेस कर सकते हैं. फॉर इंस्टेंस, एक बैंक है, बैंक्स के बहुत सारी लॉ फर्म्स जो होती हैं वो उनकी सप्लाई चेन के अंदर होती है. लॉ फर्म्स जो होती हैं वो उनको दे रही होती हैं, सपोर्ट दे रही होती हैं, उनको ऑब्वियसली उनको रेगुलेटरी कंप्लायंस के अंदर सपोर्ट दे देती हैं, और बड़े 25,000 तरह के तरीके होते हैं जिनके अंदर उनको सपोर्ट कर देती हैं. अब लॉ फर्म के अंदर जो है किसी ना किसी तरह की कोई वल्नरेबिलिटी है, तो बैंक्स का काम ये है, इसके ऊपर हम बात कर चुके हैं इस प्रेजेंटेशन में, मगर बैंक्स का काम ये है कि वो लॉ फर्म्स के ऊपर कड़ी नजर रखें. They keep an eye on those law firms. They ask them to show them their regular vulnerability management processes. They share with them their vulnerability management reports. They share with them their threat management report, and they go and get the regular updates from them that how they are managing their vulnerabilities, how they are managing their risk, what kind of risk do they have, what have they done about that. They need to ask those supply chain entities कि भाई compliance तुम्हारी कैसी चल रही है. We are bound to ISO 27001 and PCI-DSS and Sarbanes-Oxley. Are you or not? And if you are, when was your last audit done? What are the reports of those audits? If there were any gaps identified in those audits, did you take any measures to fill those gaps? Penetration testing तुम्हारी कैसी चल रही है, तुम्हारे vulnerability scans कैसे चल रहे हैं? All those kind of questions, you know. और ये सब आर्बिट्रेरी नहीं होना चाहिए. ऐसा नहीं है कि जी एक दिन जो है वो किसी को याद आया और उसने कहा कि चलो आज चल के मैं अपनी थर्ड पार्टी को चेक करता हूँ. This should be embedded into their business processes to make sure that, you know, their supply chain entities are they're vigilant and they're responsive. तो इस तरह से होगा. बाकी ये कि जिस तरह आपने अभी ये NotPetya की बात की, तो इसमें जो था बिल्कुल ऐसे ही था. एक मैंने वो उसका भी बात की है, अकाउंटिंग सॉफ्टवेयर की बात की है जिसके थ्रू अटैक आया था. और ये कि अगर इस तरह से आपने जो है वो क्या कहते उन पर रखी होती, निगाह रखी होती, उनके जो है क्या कहते उनकी आप रिपोर्ट्स को आप देख रहे होते, तो शायद ये मसला ना होता आपके साथ. बट देन देयर यू गो. आई होप आई हैव आंसर्ड योर क्वेश्चन. कुछ
Babar, now Sana Bilal.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for so much informative session. First of all, I want to say. Secondly, I would like to ask, अगर आप बात कर रहे हैं बैंक सेक्टर की या किसी बहुत बड़ी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की जिसमें हम सीम इम्प्लीमेंट कर रहे हैं तो हम ये सारी चीज़ें चेक कर सकते हैं लॉग्स वगैरह. लेकिन अगर हम बात कर रहे हैं अपने पर्सनल कंप्यूटर को सिक्योर करने की, तो उसके लिए काइंडली आप हमें कुछ चेकलिस्ट या कोई ऐसी चीज़ें बताएँगे कि बहुत सी दफ़ा हमारे कैमराज़, हमारी ऑडियोज़, स्पीकर्स हैक हुए हुए होते हैं। हम क्योंकि हमेशा फ्री एप्लीकेशंस को डाउनलोड कर रहे होते हैं और फ्री लिंक्स पे जा रहे होते हैं, लेकिन हम उसको चेक नहीं कर रहे होते वायरस टोटल पे कि ये सही भी है, वैलिड है या नहीं है, और उसके साथ हम हमेशा एक्सेप्ट कर लेते हैं सारी उनकी जितनी भी वो हमसे अप्रूव करवाते हैं उनके एग्रीमेंट्स. तो काइंडली आप बताएं कि अगर मैं बात करूं कि मुझे अगर अपना पर्सनल कंप्यूटर या मोबाइल सिक्योर करना है, तो उसके लिए मुझे क्या चीज़ें देखनी पड़ेंगी, और कोई ऐसी चेकलिस्ट बताएं, कोई वेबसाइट या कोई ऐसा वीडियो ट्यूटोरियल जो मुझे हेल्प कर सके.
देखिए सना, बात ये कि ये सवाल बड़ा ज़बरदस्त है और ये सवाल जो है जनरल पॉपुलेशन को एड्रेस करता है. बैंक्स और ये बड़ी बड़ी जो जो कंपनीज हैं इनको तो आप छोड़ें, ये हम लोगों की पर्सनल सिक्योरिटी के अंदर ये बहुत मैटर करता है. ये बात आपने बड़ी अच्छी की जिसमें आपने कहा कि जो है ये फ्री एप्लीकेशंस होती हैं जो हम डाउनलोड कर लेते हैं. फ्री कुछ भी नहीं होता ज़िंदगी में. आपने अगर प्राइस पैसे से नहीं पे किया तो प्राइस आपने किसी और तरीके से उसको पे कर दिया. वो जो है ना क्या वो हैकर हो सकता है जिसने आपकी जो है ना आपके लैपटॉप के अंदर, आपके कंप्यूटर के अंदर, आपके फ़ोन के अंदर या आपकी किसी और डिवाइस के अंदर जो है ना वो जाके बैठ चुका है और अब वो अपना काम वहाँ पे दिखा रहा है, वो आपकी इन्फॉर्मेशन वहाँ पे गैदर कर रहा है. तो सबसे बड़ी बात तो ये कि इस तरह की जो ये अब 90s या अर्ली नोटीज का टाइम नहीं है जहाँ पे आप जो है जहाँ पे हम लोग सब जो था ये सब एक ज़माने में लोगों ने किया है. जाके सीडीज उठा लेते थे जिसमें पायरेटेड सॉफ्टवेयर होते थे, वो जाके इंस्टॉल कर लेते थे, विंडोज इंस्टॉल करते थे, पायरेटेड ऑफिस डॉक्यूमेंट्स वो इंस्टॉल करते थे और सब बस वो चल काम चल रहा होता था. बट नाउ थिंग्स हैव चेंज और अब आपका जो है ना मतलब थ्रेट लैंडस्केप इतनी बढ़ चुकी है कि आपको इस चीज़ का ख्याल रखना पड़ेगा. तो इसलिए एक तो ये कि अपनी इन हैबिट्स के ऊपर आपको थोड़ा सा, आपसे मतलब ये नहीं कि आप, बट ये कि जनरल पॉपुलेशन जो लोग ये सुन रहे हैं उनको थोड़ा ख्याल रखना चाहिए कि बजाय इसके कहे कि फ्री सॉफ्टवेयर और फ्री इस तरह के जो है ना डॉजी किस्म की वेबसाइट्स के ऊपर जाके और डॉजी किस्म के लिंक्स के ऊपर जाके आप चीज़ों को इंस्टॉल करें. ऐसा ना करें. आप जो है मतलब हमेशा क्रेडिबल सोर्सेज से जो है सॉफ्टवेयर्स को डाउनलोड करें. लाइसेंस्ड वो इन्फॉर्मेशन होनी चाहिए और अगर पेड वर्जन्स हैं तो मोस्ट प्रॉब्ली वो सेफ होंगे. लाइक आपने विंडोज़ वगैरह आप यूज़ कर रहे हैं, अगर आपने ऑब्वियसली इसको एक क्रेडिबल उससे परचेज किया तो वो ठीक होगा. दूसरी एक और बड़ी ज़बरदस्त चीज़ है कि एक और चीज़ मैंने नोट की थी कुछ साल पहले. मेरे एक जानने वाले थे, आईफोन उन्होंने रखा हुआ था और आईफोन की वो कभी वो नहीं करते थे, अपडेट नहीं करते थे आईफोन की जो है जो, क्योंकि क्या कहते हैं आपने देखा आईफोन के ऊपर हर 5-6 महीने के बाद एक आ जाती है, एक नई अपडेट आ जाती है. तो वो अपडेट को ना डाउनलोड करते थे ना उसको इंस्टॉल करते थे. और मैं कहता था भाई ये क्यों है, ये तुमने ये तो कोई जो है ना 6-7 अपडेट्स आ चुकी हैं, तुमने क्यों उसके पीछे रखा है. कहता है यार अपडेट को डाउनलोड करते हैं तो फोन जो है ना वो स्लो हो जाता है कुछ अरसे के बाद. और ये आईफोन वालों ने बड़ा चक्कर चलाया हुआ है कि ये जो है ना ये अपडेट्स भेजते रहते हैं तो वो फोन स्लो हो जाता है, फिर आपको नया फोन लेना पड़ता है, इसलिए मैं अपडेट इंस्टॉल नहीं करता. और ये बंदा, मैं ऐसे नहीं बात कर रहा है ये कोई जो है ना कोई गली में चलता हुआ बंदा था, ही वॉज एन IT पर्सन हिमसेल्फ, एक सोल्यूशन आर्किटेक्ट था और वो ऐसी बात कर रहा था. अब आप ये देखें कि अपडेट्स को ना इंस्टॉल करने से क्या हो रहा है, इनके अंदर सिक्योरिटी अपडेट्स होती हैं आपके ये जो आ रही होती हैं, और आप इस चीज़ के ऊपर अपने कॉन्स्पिरेसी थ्योरी आपने माइंडसेट बनाया हुआ है कि जी अपडेट्स आएंगी फोन स्लो हो जाएगा, मैंने नया खरीदना पड़ेगा. उसके बदले में आप क्या कर रहे हैं, आपने अपडेट्स नहीं इंस्टॉल किया, आप अपने फ़ोन को जो है वो उसके अंदर सिक्योरिटी अपडेट्स नहीं हो रही हैं, उसके अंदर जो है आपकी वनरेबिलिटीज जो है वो सामने रखी हुई है, किसी दिन हैकर ने आके काम दिखा देना, आपको पता भी नहीं चलना. तो ये एक दूसरी चीज़ है कि आप हमेशा अपने जो है फ़ोन्स के ऊपर जो सिक्योरिटी अपडेट्स हैं उनको आप रखें. माइक्रोसॉफ्ट की अपनी जो है जो आपके नॉर्मली हम लोग विंडोज़ यूज़ करते हैं और माइक्रोसॉफ्ट ने अब जो है वो डिफेंडर का क्या कहते हैं होम वर्जन भी रखा हुआ है जो कि इसके ऊपर आता है. वो रखना है तो क्या कहते हैं उसके ऊपर रिलाई करना करें, बहुत अच्छा है वो क्या कहते हैं उसका जो उसकी अपनी फायरवॉल है. उसके अलावा आप नॉर्टन मैकेफी वगैरह भी है, उसके ऊपर भी आप जा सकते हैं. बट ये सारी वो चीज़ें जो कि हम लोग जो था इनको हम अवॉइड करते थे, यार पैसे बनाने के तरीके हैं, ये नहीं करना चाहिए, इसको छोड़ो, इससे क्या होता है. मगर बड़ा कुछ होता है, हमें नजर आ रहा है सब कुछ होता है. तो एक बेसिक हाइजीन आप रखें. फिशिंग ईमेल्स, इसके ऊपर मैं इस पे भी वेबिनार में भी बात कर चुका हूँ. फिशिंग ईमेल्स जो है उसके ऊपर आप ना क्लिक करें, हर तरह के लिंक्स के ऊपर आप ना क्लिक करें. व्हाट्सएप के ऊपर आपके जानने वाले बाज़ दफ़ा चीज़ आपको फॉरवर्ड कर देते हैं और आप और क्या क्या और उससे नुकसान हो जाता है. आप क्लिक करते हैं, कोई या कोई सिस्टम हैक हो जाता है, कुछ होता है, और जब आप उससे कहते हैं भाई तुमने मुझे फॉरवर्ड क्यों किया था, कहता है यार मैंने तो फॉरवर्ड एज रिसीव किया था, तो मुझे तो खुद नहीं पता था क्या था। इसलिए आपको ये भी नहीं पता कि जो है ना, मतलब जो चीज़ आपके पास आ रही है वो भी सेफ है कि नहीं, तो आपने उसके ऊपर भी थोड़ा सा रखना है कि आपने हर चीज़ के ऊपर क्लिक नहीं करना है ना, इस किस्म के। फिर आपकी सोशल इंजीनियरिंग वाला मामला है, लोग आपको मैसेज करते हैं कि जी मैं जो फलाना दोस्त हूँ, और ये फेसबुक पे बहुत आम है, वो आपका किसी दोस्त का फेक प्रोफाइल बनाएगा, उसके बाद वो आपको मैसेज करेगा, आपको कहेगा मुझे पैसे भेज दो यहाँ पे। ये भी साइबर क्राइम ही है ना, जिसके अंदर वो आपसे पैसा निकलवाने की कोशिश कर रहा है। तो इन चीज़ों का थोड़ा ख्याल रखें, बी ऑलवेज विजिलेंट। तो यही मैं कह सकता हूँ इस वक्त सना। उसके अलावा जो है बाकी जस्ट कीप एन आई।
खुरम, कुछ सवालात और हैं हमारे पास। जैन जावेद
जी,
जैन है, उनका एक चैट बॉक्स में भी आया हुआ है क्वेश्चन।
चैट बॉक्स में आया हुआ है क्वेश्चन जैन का। जैन कह रहे हैं जी, कुड यू प्लीज गाइड अस ऑन हाउ वी कैन इफेक्टिवली बैलेंस थ्योरेटिकल नॉलेज ऑन हैंड्स ऑफ। यार ये जबरदस्त क्वेश्चन है जैन, बहुत बहुत आला क्वेश्चन है ये, और ये क्वेश्चन मुझसे लोग बहुत पूछते हैं, क्योंकि होता क्या है कि लोगों के पास CISSP और सिज्म और कॉमटिया और इस तरह के बेतहाशा कोर्सेज आ जाते हैं, वो जाते हैं, वो इनको चेस करते हैं, पढ़ाइयाँ करते हैं, हो भी जाते हैं कोर्स, जब बाद सर्टिफिकेशन हो भी जाती है, और फिर उनको उसका नहीं मिल रहा होता, कुछ उनका रिवॉर्ड नहीं मिल रहा होता उसका। आजकल के जमाने के अंदर देखिए, जब हम लोगों ने 20 साल पहले हम लोग जन इंडस्ट्री में आते हैं ना, तो हमारे लिए एक्सपीरियंसेस लेना बड़ा मुश्किल होता था। जब तक कोई नौकरी नहीं देगा, जब तक कोई सिस्टम को हमारे हवाले नहीं करेगा, तब तक हम सीख नहीं पाते थे। मगर अब ऐसा नहीं है। अब आप जाएंगे, आपको थियोरेटिकल नॉलेज आपको यूट्यूब पे फ्री मिलेगी, थोड़े से ज्यादा पैसा खर्च कर लेंगे, आपको यूडमी के ऊपर कोर्सेज मिल जाएंगे, प्लूरल साइट के ऊपर आपको मिल जाएंगे, नहीं भी करेंगे तो यूट्यूब पे सब कुछ आपको फ्री मिल जाएगा। प्रैक्टिकल नॉलेज के लिए आपको AZ9 क्या कहते हैं, आपका ये जो माइक्रोसॉफ्ट का पूरा हुआ है, फॉर इंस्टेंस मैं ऐसे माइक्रोसॉफ्ट की बात कर रहा हूँ इस वक्त, आप किसी भी उस पर ले सकते हैं। आप चाहते हैं कि जी मैंने माइक्रोसॉफ्ट का सिक्योरिटी एक्सपर्ट बनना है, आप जाके आप AZ900 का कोर्स करें, उसके अंदर आपकी वो थोड़ी सी सिक्योर आपकी जो है ना क्लाउड की फाउंडेशन बन जाएगी। फिर आप SC900 का करेंगे, उसमें आपकी सिक्योरिटी की बन जाएगी। फिर आप AZ500 का करेंगे। अब ये कोर्सेज जो है, जब आप AZ500 में जाएंगे, आपको रियलाइज होगा यार ये सारे कोर्सेज सिर्फ थियोरेटिकल नहीं थे, इसके अंदर तो वो आपसे प्रैक्टिकल इंप्लीमेंटेशन करवा रहा है। माइक्रोसॉफ्ट ने अपने पास जो है ना, जो उनका लर्निंग का प्लेटफॉर्म है, उसके ऊपर बहुत ही मिनिमल कॉस्ट के ऊपर, ऑल यू नीड अ क्रेडिट कार्ड, और उसके ऊपर कोई ज्यादा पैसे भी नहीं वो चार्ज करते, उसके थ्रू जो है ना क्या कहते हैं, आप ये सब चीजें प्रैक्टिस कर सकते हैं। विज लैब्स एक बहुत जबरदस्त फोरम है, और बाय द वे ये कोई मुझे पैसे वैसे नहीं दे रहे हैं जिनकी मैं बातें कर रहा हूँ, ये वास्ट में, तो मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ कि विज लैब्स के ऊपर आप जाएंगे, विज लैब के ऊपर आप जाके देखेंगे, वहां पे बेतहाशा जो है कोर्सेज पड़े हुए हैं, जो कि आपको प्रैक्टिकली गाइड कर रहे हैं। और आपने एक दफा AZ500 कर लिया, एंड माइंड यू कर लिया, ये नहीं कि बैठ के सिर्फ उसका एग्जाम पास करने का किया, उसको अच्छी तरीके से समझा, उसकी लैब्स को किया, ठीक तरीके से किया, इम्प्लीमेंट किया, और आप जाके कम से कम इंटरव्यू के अंदर ये बोल सकते हैं कि भाई प्रैक्टिकल एक्सपीरियंस है। ये नहीं है कि किसी कंपनी के अंदर है, बट प्रैक्टिकल एक्सपीरियंस तो है ना। आप उन 4 लोगों से ज्यादा बेहतर है जो कि सिर्फ थियोरेटिकल जार्गन्स और सिर्फ थियोरेटिकल फ्लफ की बात करते हैं। तो ये मैं कहूंगा इस आपके सवाल के जवाब में। आई होप इट मेक सेंस देन। तो
श्योर। नाउ मोहम्मद अब्दुल्ला, बाबर अब्दुल्ला मतलब है।
अस्सलाम वालेकुम सर।
वालेकुम सलाम।
सर मुझे कुछ क्वेश्चन थे डीएलपी के हवाले से कि डीएलपी का क्या स्कोप है आगे लाइफ के अंदर और बाकी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के अंदर वो किस तरह हेल्पफुल करती है, थोड़ा इसके बारे में कुछ गाइड कीजिए।
भाई डीएलपी का स्कोप ही स्कोप है, क्योंकि डीएलपी जो होती है वो आपका डेटा लॉस प्रिवेंशन है। कोई भी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है वो अपने सीक्रेट्स लूज नहीं करना चाहती है, और खाली अपने सीक्रेट्स ही नहीं, अपनी अपनी कस्टमर की इंफॉर्मेशन भी नहीं लूज करनी चाहती। आप बैंक को उठा लें, डीएलपी जो है वो कवर कर रहा है आपकी कस्टमर इंफॉर्मेशन को, आपकी एम्प्लॉय इंफॉर्मेशन को, आपके ट्रेड्स को, आपके ट्रेड सीक्रेट्स को, इन सब चीज़ों को कवर कर रहा है। इमेजिन एक इनसाइडर थ्रेट बैठा हुआ है, एक रोग एम्प्लॉय बैठा हुआ है, वो उठा के ये सारी चीज़ें जो है अपने आप को ही चाहे ईमेल कर रहा है बाहर बैठा हुआ, या वो किसी और को ईमेल कर रहा है, या वो किसी FTP सर्वर के ऊपर ये सारी चीज़ें अपलोड कर रहा है, ताकि बाद में जो है वो बाहर से जो है वो बैठ के उनको निकाल सके, उनको बेच सके।
लेकिन सर जी सर मैं यहाँ पे थोड़ी अपनी बात कर रहा हूँ, लेकिन यहाँ पे कंपनी में सेम और उसके अलावा बाकी टूल्स वगैरह भी जो लगे होंगे वो तो पुलिस वगैरह उसको फौरन ब्लॉक करेंगी कि ये बंदा ना अनऑथराइज एक्टिविटी कर रहा है, तो उससे वो
मगर
पकड़ा तो जाएगा फौरन।
अब वो फिर जो है ना उस चीज़ को ज़रा डेप्थ के अंदर देखने वाली बात है। डीएलपी का जो बेसिक फंक्शन होता है, वो बंदा
जी जी।
एक 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 आम ईमेल के थ्रू भी अपने आप को वो डॉक्यूमेंट्स कहते हैं वो भेज सकता है। सीम जरूरी नहीं है कि उस चीज़ को वो ब्लॉक करे। और सीम का बेसिकली मकसद जो होता है वो इंसिडेंट रिपोर्टिंग होता है। सीम एक्ट नहीं करता। सीम जो होता है वो सिर्फ उसको जो है चारों तरफ से जो है वो इन्फॉर्मेशन को गैदर कर रहा होता है, आपके फायरवॉल से गैदर कर रहा होता है, आपके इधर उधर सेट कर रहा होता है, उसके बाद जो है वो करता है। तो जरूरी नहीं है कि सीम जो है वो आपको सारी चीज को वो क्या कहते हैं ब्लॉक कर सके। डेटा लॉस प्रिवेंशन जो है वो स्पेसिफिकली आपकी इंटरनल इंफॉर्मेशन को बाहर जाने से रोक रहा होता है, वो उस पर नजर रख रहा होता है। तो अब उसके अंदर फिर आप पॉलिसीज वगैरह को देख सकते हैं जाके कि किस तरीके से वो पॉलिसीज जो है उन पे वो कर रही है।
तो सर इसका रोड मैप क्या होगा डीएलपी का, कहाँ से हम स्टार्ट करें और कौन से यानी कि जो है वेंडर जो उसका सबसे बेस्ट जा रहा है? वैसे लोग कह रहे हैं फोर्स पॉइंट सबसे बेस्ट जा रहा है, इसके अलावा कौन कौन सा अच्छा जा रहा है?
यार अब मैं इस वेंडर्स के ऊपर तो नहीं बात कर सकता कि कौन सा वेंडर जो है वो कौन से टूल को जो है किसका टूल अच्छा है। ये मेरा मतलब वो भी नहीं है, कोई एरियाज ऑफ एक्सपर्टीज नहीं है कि मैं डीएलपी और वेंडर्स को जो है वो जज कर सकूं। ये आपकी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की नीड के ऊपर होता है। बाज़ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के लिए एक वेंडर बेहतर है, दूसरी के लिए दूसरा वेंडर बेहतर है, क्योंकि उसके बिजनेस गोल्स, उसके रिस्क डिफरेंट हैं। तो ज़रूरी नहीं है कि एक वेंडर जो सब जो है ना, जो बैंक्स और फाइनेंस के लिए अच्छा हो तो वो जो है इंश्योरेंसेस के लिए भी अच्छा हो या फिर किसी और ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के लिए भी अच्छा हो। तो ये आपको थोड़ा सा खुद ही जो है रिसर्च करनी पड़ती है। जब आप किसी भी उसको ले रहे होते हैं, ऑन बोर्ड कर रहे होते हैं किसी वेंडर को, तो ऑब्वियसली आप उनसे आरएफपी का प्रोसेस से लेके गुजरते हैं, आरएफक्यू के प्रोसेस से लेके उनसे गुजरते हैं। आप अपनी आप अपनी रिक्वायरमेंट्स उनको देखते हैं, फिर आप देखते हैं कि जी इन रिक्वायरमेंट्स को आपका ये वेंडर जो है ये मीट कर रहा है कि नहीं कर रहा। आप उनको सिनेरियोज देते हैं, आप देखते हैं कि वो इन सिनेरियोज को मीट कर रहा है कि नहीं कर रहा, और फिर आप जो है ना उसके साथ उसमें एग्रीमेंट में लॉक इन करते हैं अपने आप को।
अच्छा खुरम,
ओके
हमारे
सर,
पास
थैंक यू।
दो क्वेश्चन्स और हैं चैट बॉक्स में, फिर वी आर रनिंग आउट ऑफ टाइम, तो हम फिर इसको क्लोज
जी
करते हैं। अच्छा, सेकेंडली खुरम, अगर आप चाहें तो अपना कोई लिंक्डइन या आप पार्टिसिपेंट्स आपसे किस तरह कांटेक्ट कर सके, तो वो भी अगर शेयर करना चाहें कोई मोड, तो आप चैट बॉक्स में बता सकते हैं। और
जी जी।
क्वेश्चंस भी देख लें। नसीरुल हसन रहमान साहब का एक क्वेश्चन है, सना बिलाल साहिबा का एक क्वेश्चन है।
अच्छा, एक मिनट है जब क्वेश्चंस क्या हैं इनके, एक मिनट आप अगर रीड कर दें क्वेश्चंस को, मुझे पता नहीं ये विंडो
हाँ,
में कुछ हो
surely.
गया।
We mostly talked about IT security. What
जी
is your input on OT security? एक ये क्वेश्चन है।
अच्छा, राइट, हाँ जबर ये बहुत अच्छा क्वेश्चन है। और ओटी सिक्योरिटी जो है, ऑल दो ओटी और आईटी सिक्योरिटी के जहाँ तक ताल्लुक है, इनके बेसिक्स और इनकी फाउंडेशन सेम है, मगर आगे जाके ये बहुत डिफरेंट हो जाते हैं, क्योंकि ऑब्वियसली ओटी के अंदर जो है आप मशीनों को देख रहे होते हैं, आप इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को देख रहे होते हैं, आप शिपिंग टर्मिनल्स को देख रहे होते हैं, आप एयरलाइनर्स को, आप अपने क्या कहते हैं इलेक्ट्रिक ग्रिड्स को देख रहे होते हैं, आप स्काडा को देख रहे होते हैं। तो ये सारी चीजें तो वो एक एक डायमेंशन ही अलग है, और उसके अंदर एक्सपर्टीज एक अलग है। उनके अंदर जो आपके कंप्लायंस और आपके जो जो कंप्लायंस के स्टैंडर्ड्स हैं, जो आईएसओ स्टैंडर्ड्स हैं, वो बड़े मुख्तलिफ हैं। तो इसलिए और इसका स्कोप टू बी ऑनेस्ट बहुत है आजकल जो है, मतलब ओटी सिक्योरिटी का, क्योंकि इसके अंदर जिंदगियां इन्वॉल्व हैं। आई मीन आपकी एयरलाइंस, आपकी ट्रेन, आपका इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, इसके अंदर मतलब मेक और ब्रेक वाली सिचुएशन। तो ओटी का जो है ये एक डिफरेंट वो है, स्लाइटली डिफरेंट फील्ड है। बट ये कि अगर आप उसको CISSP का जो आप कोर्स कंटेंट देखें, तो उसके अंदर एक डोमेन है स्पेशली ओटी सिक्योरिटी के अंदर के लिए। अब वहां से भी उसको थोड़ा सा देख सकते हैं, जो है ना एक्सप्लोर कर सकते हैं ओटी सिक्योरिटी को।
एक क्वेश्चन और है, व्हाट इज द स्कोप ऑफ थ्रेट इंटेलिजेंस एंड इंसिडेंट रिस्पांस इन पाकिस्तान?
थ्रेट इंटेलिजेंस का स्कोप जो है वो हर जगह है। क्या पाकिस्तान क्या है या कहाँ पे थ्रेट इंटेलिजेंस ही तो इसके अंदर मैंने ये बात की थी कि थ्रेट इंटेलिजेंस, थ्रेट जो है, थ्रेट और वल्नरेबिलिटी आपस में मिलते हैं तो रिस्क बनता है। तो अगर आप थ्रेट की इंटेलिजेंस, तो आपको जाहिर बात है रखनी पड़ेगी। पाकिस्तान के अंदर भी उसका स्कोप है, जो ना आपके जो आपका इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर है उसके अंदर है, बैंक्स के अंदर है, हर चीज़ के अंदर है। और इंसिडेंस रिस्पॉन्स जो है सॉक के अंदर आपको या ना, सॉक जो है वो होगी जब भी तो आपको पता चलेगा कि चल क्या रहा है, कोई अटैक्स हो रहे हैं कि नहीं हो रहे। तो सॉक के और आपकी थ्रेट इंटेल की और इंसिडेंट रिस्पांस का उतना ही स्कोप है जितना साइबर सिक्योरिटी में किसी और चीज़ का। आप किसी चीज़ को अंडरमाइन नहीं कर सकते कि वल्नरेबिलिटी मैनेजमेंट ज़्यादा अच्छी है और थ्रेट इंटेलिजेंस कम है, और ऑडिट और कंप्लायंस GRC ज़्यादा बेहतर है और क्लाउड सिक्योरिटी कम है। मगर हर चीज ये सारी चीजें आपस में मिलती हैं तभी एक जो है ना वो बनती है, एक साउंड सिक्योरिटी सिस्टम बनता है। तो ये है।
थैंक यू वेरी मच खुरम। मेरे ख्याल में क्वेश्चंस भी हो गए, आपने कांटेक्ट डिटेल्स भी आई थिंक आपने शेयर कर दी हैं।
जी
आप लिंक्डइन पे लोग कांटेक्ट कर लेंगे। और मैं पार्टिसिपेंट्स को बताता चलूं कि हमारी डिपॉजिटरी में मेंटेन्ड है सारे हमारे वेबिनार्स, प्रीवियस जो 6 हैं ये भी हमारा अपलोड हो जाएगा, तो आप वहाँ भी जाके इसको कर सकते हैं। और थैंक यू वेरी मच खुरम टू टेकिंग आउट टाइम फॉर नेशनल सर्च वेबिनार session. I would like to thank on behalf of National Cyber Emergency Response Team from the Government of Pakistan कि आपने time निकाला हमारे लिए, and we are sure participants found this session informative and valuable, and we surely engage you for upcoming sessions as well. हम आपको दोबारा इंशाल्लाह करेंगे, आपको यूके में आप हैं, हम आपको तंग करते रहेंगे इंशाल्लाह कि आप आए हमारे साथ करें। और आपको उम्मीद है अच्छा लगा होगा ये सेशंस और सेशन और सारे क्वेश्चंस वगैरह। इंशाल्लाह फिर आपसे कांटेक्ट होता है। एंड लास्टली वी आर ग्रेटफुल टू एवरीवन हु पार्टिसिपेटेड इन दिस सेशन। So thank you very much. We are signing out. Take care and bye bye.
Thank you, Imran. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank you, everybody.
Imran.
Assalamu alaikum.